On this show, we've talked many times about how Louisville needs to address the linebacker position in the portal. Well, Oregon transfer Keith Brown is going to be on campus soon, and we'll also talk about Louisville offering Jackson State linebacker Jeronte Davis, while also discussing the Louisville Cardinals getting a commitment from Duquesne offensive lineman Vincent Lumia. With that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. As I mentioned, my name is Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. All about the portal on today's episode of the show. We'll talk about some possible linebacker additions. Oregon's Keith Brown will be on campus coming up soon for an official visit. We'll also talk about Louisville offering Jackson State star Jeronte Davis. And then to conclude the show, we'll discuss the newest football commitment, Duquesne offensive tackle Vincent Lumia. Obviously, with spring ball coming to a close, the portal's going to get real busy here soon. I think I read somewhere where the portal closes like April 30th. I could be wrong. I think that's just what I read. But regardless, you're going to see a lot of portal movement over the next week, couple weeks. As spring ball concludes, players don't like where they are on the depth chart. Players want to go elsewhere, yada, 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 whatever may have you. Needless to say, there's going to be a lot of movement. Louisville has a lot of scholarships still to address. 7 open scholarships. I think six open scholarships as of right now. I could be wrong, but nonetheless, a good amount of opportunity to work with for next year's team. And then that's also, you have to take into consideration that other players may leave. It's not going to just happen at other schools. You would imagine that it happens at Louisville as well. But nonetheless, Jeff Brohm and company have done a great job addressing the needs in the portal. They have absolutely transformed the wide receiver room. They've added defensive standouts in the secondary, the defensive line, other multiple positions. But linebacker seems to still be a position that you pinpoint as probably the top position of need for next year's team. Obviously, you lost Dorian Jones to Cincinnati, Monty Montgomery to Mississippi, Momo Sanogo to the NFL draft. So, and you brought in Stanquan Clark, who's going to be a fantastic player in his time in college. But like I mentioned, still kind of nervous about truly relying on a freshman linebacker, regardless if he's a 4-star or not, truly relying on a freshman linebacker to come in and start right away. So that leaves opportunity for guys like Jalen Alderman, KJ Cloyd, TJ Quinn. I can't speak today. TJ Quinn, KJ Cloyd, Jackson Hamilton, other players that were kind of waiting in the wings for their opportunity. Now we'll get an opportunity to, get some significant playing time. But it seems like with the, first couple days of this wave in the transfer portal, it seems like Louisville has shown that linebacker is going to be a position of need. And Oregon's Keith Brown entered the transfer portal pretty quickly after he tweeted out that he will be taking an official visit to Louisville coming up soon. This is obviously significant news, considering that this is a position of need for the Cardinals next season. Now, when you look at what Brown did for the Ducks up in Eugene the past 2 seasons, 2021, 15 total tackles, 6 solo, 2022, 21 tackles, 1 sack. I think he started in 3 games or so and ended up playing in all 12, if I'm not mistaken, or he played in 12. But Brown, a highly rated player coming out of high school, was projected by a lot of fans and some of the Oregon blog sites to be a starter at the linebacker position next season. Now, granted, that may have changed with spring ball. Who knows? I'm not necessarily sure of what went into the decision to enter the portal for Keith Brown. But nonetheless, the 6'1", 235-pound native of Lebanon, Oregon, was rated as the number one player coming out of the state in the 2021 class, 114th best player in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, and the 13th best linebacker. Now, to give a little bit of a glimpse of what type of player Keith Brown is, because there's not a lot of film on him accessible for fans to watch, Brandon Huffman, national recruiting insider / editor of 24/7 Sports, projected him back in 2018 as around 4th to 7th round pick in the NFL draft, compared him to Nigel Bradham of the Philadelphia Eagles. He said this about Keith Brown. Now, granted, this was back in 2018, but said physical and strong, shows good lateral movement and ability to move in space. A downhill linebacker who can be a 3-down player in college, but needs to improve on his play diagnosis. Tendency to get flat-footed at times, but shows good recovery ability and willingness to mix up at the line of scrimmage. Projects as multi-year Power 5 starter and third-day NFL draft selection. So, you kind of get, little curious when you wonder, well, why did he enter the portal? And I think that kind of sheds a lot of light on, how well he could play here at Louisville. Now, granted, that wouldn't be the end-all, be-all, but nonetheless, you still wonder, because was it a matter of playing time? Was it a matter of, just wanting a change of scenery, so on and so forth? I think that would be able to give you an insight into why a certain player entered the portal and what that would mean for a player, moving forward in their respective career. But nonetheless, that is what it is. I think that, with a handful of people saying that Keith Brown would possibly be a starter, and it seems like in spring practice, he lined up as a first-teamer at the linebacker position. So something to focus on. So I think that this is one of those instances to where, with Louisville getting involved so quickly, you would have to assume that there is significant interest from both sides. But I would like this addition here for Louisville because, number one, it fills a position of need. Obviously, linebacker is a position that Louisville is going to need moving forward. And I think that for Keith Brown, you're probably looking at this situation like, okay, I can come into Louisville and possibly start right away and play the significant amount of snaps. Now, was he projected to do that at Oregon this next year? Well, I think that's to be, to be determined. I'm not necessarily sure. Forgive me for not necessarily being well versed with the pulse of the depth chart in mid-April for Oregon football, but nonetheless, it seems like this took a lot of people by shock. It shocked a lot of people. It took a lot of people by surprise, I should say. So ultimately, I think that a player, that was very highly rated coming out of high school has shown promise at times at Oregon for a solid team. This would probably be a no-brainer addition for Jeff Brohm's team. You add a position of need. You add a possible starter at that position. Started multiple games during his career. Maybe not necessarily, jumping off the page in terms of statistics, but overall, still, it seems like there's a lot of talent to work with. Pretty solid size, being 6'1", 235 pounds. It looks like it's probably going to be this week. He will be on campus for spring ball. So shout out to the coaching staff for getting that urgency, for bringing a player on campus that quickly. It seems like, from what I've heard and from what I've seen on social media, this isn't a recruitment that's going to take a ton of time. So I'm not necessarily sure of who else has reached out to Keith Brown in the portal. But nonetheless, I think that you're banking on the production here, and you're banking on, the potential to obviously get better and be a solid player for Louisville, at the very least solid depth, and that's something to look forward to if you're a Louisville fan. I think that this is extremely encouraging. You have about 6 spots to work with currently, possibly more if more players enter the portal. Linebacker is obviously a position of need. There doesn't have to be a lot of justification as to why this move makes a lot of sense, not only for the Louisville Cardinals, but I guess you could say for Keith Brown as well. I guess it would probably be harder to maybe justify as to why, going from Oregon to Louisville. But nonetheless, I think that if he sees this as a good opportunity, hey, who are we to disagree with him? So definitely one to watch for here, former top 120 player visiting the Cardinals. So like I mentioned, linebacker is such a key position of need. The Cardinals have extended an offer to Jackson State star Jurriente Davis. We'll talk about that highly anticipated recruitment and what he could bring to the Cardinals program here in just a second, after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place that first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. There's a lot of bets, from home run totals for a game for Aaron Judge to how many strikeouts you think that Jacob deGrom is going to have, so on and so forth. Don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. So moving on into the second segment, obviously we talked about the Keith Brown recruitment. The Cardinals offered Jeronte Davis, the linebacker from Jackson State, 6-foot junior, 231 pounds, native of Greensboro, North Carolina, played his first season of college ball for Middle Tennessee State, had 71 tackles, 38 of those assisted, 33 solos, 2 pass deflections, 3 sacks. Ended up transferring to Jackson State for the 2022 season, had 39 tackles this past year. 25 of those were solo, 1 pass deflection, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. I would probably caution fans to not look too much into the statistics, because Davis was an absolute star on the field. When you watch the highlight tapes, when you go back and watch some film from Jackson State's games, it's very evident of where he is on the film at all times. He is an extremely explosive linebacker that is able to get into the backfield very, very quickly and with a vengeance. Does a good job of going sideline to sideline. Also solid in passing situations as well. I think that he probably specializes more so as a pass rusher and defending the run, versus maybe dropping back into coverage. But he's pretty complete as far as linebackers come, when it comes to a linebacker that can cover sideline to sideline, get into the opposing backfield, defend the run, but also get after the quarterback. Solid tackler, solid technique, just very, very explosive, in getting after the ball. Trying to think of a player of who he reminds me of that played for Louisville that would kind of shed a little bit of light to fans on the style of play. Not many players are really coming to mind here. I think that, I think a player like Preston Brown comes to mind, that, that amount of strength, being, 6 foot, 230 pounds, the ability to get into the opposing backfield, solid tackler, does a good job of not letting opposing ball carriers escape. So he does a good job of wrapping up, a good job of bringing guys down with the first initial contact. So that's something to focus on. The thing to focus on here, I know Louisville has offered, but Davis has a long list of suitors. Oklahoma has offered recently. Kentucky has offered recently. Texas A&M has gotten a visit. He had a phenomenal visit to College Station, and with how well versed the Aggies are in the NIL realm, you have to wonder if Jimbo Fisher's team is going to potentially be a leader in this recruitment. So that's something to focus on here. But I think ultimately, he feels sort of that same need as Keith Brown would. Ultimately, for me, I think that he's probably one of the best linebackers in the portal currently. Granted, the elephant in the room is that there is a visit set for Colorado coming up in the future, especially with the transfer portal winding down. That is one to focus on because, Deion Sanders primetime is coaching at Colorado now, so there's the familiarity with the coaching staff. And not only that, but Colorado is a very popular program currently for very highly rated guys to go to, very productive players to go to. So it's going to be hard to recruit against Colorado, going to be hard to recruit against Texas A&M, places that are getting visits. I think that that's kind of the telltale signs with the limited amount of time available for players to make their decisions before, summer classes start here in the next month or so, is that you're going to see a lot based upon the actions of players when it comes to making those visits. As significant is that Keith Brown is going to be on campus for the spring game, it also kind of works against Louisville as well, because it's like, well, you're really on the outside looking in this respective recruitment. So I wanted to at least discuss this recruitment because it shows you that there is a trend. It shows you that Louisville is still prioritizing the linebacker position. I think that it's probably, in my opinion, the number one position need for the Cardinals at this point in time. Could that change with a couple commitments? Sure, it can. But at this point in time, I think that you're probably looking to add, I'd say, at least one, probably two, maybe even three, depending on if that opportunity arises in the portal. So Jeronte Davis has a long list of suitors. I mean, he's one of the best players in the portal currently. Going to have a lot of schools after him, as there already are. Going to be one that Louisville really has to try to get a visit for here. But at this point in time, it seems like the clock is running out on Jeff Brohm's program in this recruitment. But like I said, you're not going to be a serious contender in all of them. But I mainly wanted to talk about this because you see some parallels here. You see, where the offers are going to. Obviously, offensive lineman, tight end, and linebacker as well. So a key portal offer. So, but we do have a new commitment. Duquesne offensive lineman Vincent Lumia. We'll talk about him here in just a second. Before we do that, I want to thank you all again, for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Every dayers. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to get back into basketball recruiting as it pertains to the portal. Louisville has reached out to a handful of guys from R.J. Louise to Cam Hayes and Raekwon Battle. We'll talk about those three players, so be sure to check out tomorrow's episode. But to conclude the show, we're going to talk about the most recent commitment, that is Duquesne offensive lineman Vincent Lumia. Lumia has played for Duquesne for the past, 5 seasons, and utilizing his final season. Obviously, Duquesne an FCS school, so it may force you to wonder, well, what is the scoop here? What's the reason behind Jeff Brohm going after a player from the FCS? And I think that, I trust this scouting, obviously. I think that Jeff Brohm's given us no reason to not trust him at this point in time, obviously. But, I think that Lumia, I think it's Lumia. It might be Lumia. Regardless, I apologize to Vincent if I'm saying his name incorrectly. But Vincent played for Duquesne for the past 5 seasons. Earlier in April, became a grad transfer and committed to Louisville on Saturday. 6'3", 290 pounds, played offensive tackle. A lot of people, from what I've seen, have said that he was the Duke's best offensive lineman this past season, one of their best players on the team. played and started in all of the games. According to Phil Steele, he was third team All Northeast Conference and the highest rated offensive lineman, according to Pro Football Focus. So ultimately, the native of Florida, which we now see another player from Florida coming to the Vills. So I wonder if this was an opportunity to continue that pipeline, something to focus on there. But, didn't necessarily have a ton of playing time his first couple seasons. And then beginning in 2021, made all Northeast Conference teams in the next 3 years. For Louisville, I think that this obviously makes a ton of sense here because you've lost some veterans. Obviously, Trevor Reed. You've lost, Adonis Boone, Caleb Chandler. I think that he projects to compete for the snaps at right tackle. I think that Michael Gonzalez is going to obviously be your starting left tackle. Ronaldo Brown's probably the starting right tackle on paper currently. Maybe don't count out true freshman Luke Burgess in the picture. You would assume that the offensive lineman for Virginia or from Virginia, who for some reason is escaping me at the moment. I need to look that up because it's going to absolutely drive me crazy. They got a commitment from a guard in the portal, John Paul Flores from Virginia, listed as an offensive tackle, but probably fits well at the guard position, maybe even at center. I think he played almost all of the positions at Virginia this past season. So you add a veteran from Virginia. I think that, it was probably a priority for Jeff Brohm and company to add a player from the portal that is a veteran that has played a good amount of snaps at their previous spot, regardless if it's Power 5 or if it's FCS. When you watch Vincent Lumia on film, he's a player that moves extremely well for his size, 6'3", 290 pounds. I've seen some people kind of question the size there or whether or not, he will be serviceable at Louisville. I don't see why he wouldn't be. I think he moves well for his size, has solid hands to combat, oncoming defenders, and is able to really get up and block upfield, kind of like how well John Paul Flores does. So I think at the very least, this is solid offensive line depth because Louisville has done a really good job of addressing the other needs in the portal. You've revamped the wide receiver room. You're going to have to address the tight end position, which I probably bet they will in the portal. You've done good with the running back room. You've got Jack Plummer, as your starting quarterback on paper going into next season. Now it's making sure that you protect Plummer and the running back committee. So you added Flores. Now you've added a player like Vincent Lumia, who I think gives you some more options, obviously, on the offensive front, especially on the right side. I think he projects as, at the very least, solid depth, solid rotational piece on the right side of the line, veteran presence that has played a lot of college football and at the very least can give you some rotational snaps. But who knows? Obviously, the ceiling would be being able to start at right tackle over Ronaldo Brown, which I'm not so sure that he will, but, tomorrow is to be seen, and we have to see how well, he performs for the Cardinals, see how well he is able to get acclimated with the offensive line group. Obviously, I think that, this is a player that obviously has played a lot of snaps at his current spot. So I think I'm interested to see, hey, how well could he play next season? Obviously, fall camp will dictate that, off-season workouts, so on and so forth. But I'm okay with Louisville utilizing a spot or honestly a couple more spots on the offensive line just to make sure that, hey, we're going to maximize protection for Jack Plummer. We know he's had some history with injuries in the past. Didn't necessarily have great offensive line last play for California. So we're going to protect him. We have sort of a younger squad. We, lost a lot of veteran leadership, lost a lot of veteran, production. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add more veterans to this offensive line, and we're going to just make sure that we are better safe than sorry in a position that obviously is very, very, critical when it comes to relation to overall success. So we discussed Keith Brown, Jurriente Davis, and Vincent Lumia. As I mentioned, for the everydayers that are coming back to the show every day, appreciate that. First of all, we're going to talk about college basketball recruiting as it pertains to the transfer portal. 3 more names to talk about: R.J. Louise, Cam Hayes, and Raekwon Battle. Would they be good fits for Louisville? How plausible is a possible commitment to the Cardinals program? So on and so forth. A lot to talk about there. So be sure to tune in and get on those episodes. But hey, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you right back here